I'd like to call this meeting to order. Tonight is Monday, November 3rd, 2014. We're meeting as a committee of the whole. It is 8:46. I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll.
Gudenkauf.
Here.
Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Polemski.
Here.
Bram.
Here.
Toledo.
Here.
York.
Here.
Levin. Healy.
Here.
Lundquist.
Here.
Kennedy absent. Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner absent. 12 present, 2 absent.
12 present, 2 absent. We have a quorum. We are in session. Any announcements? No announcements. Public comment. Clerk Spencer, did we have a,
We had a sign-in sheet and no one signed in.
okay. At this time, is there anybody who did not have an opportunity to sign in that wishes to address the city council? Mr. McLeister? No.
Gently pan the audience.
Seeing no one else in the audience wishing to opine, we will move on from public comments. Business before the committee, agenda item number 4. As the committee is aware, or council, committee of the whole is aware, we're in the midst of our fiscal year 2015 budget review. I will be turning it over to City Manager Grabowski. A couple of points I'll remind the council. I do want to stick to the 10:30 deadline that I set for this council in the past. We'll see what we can get through. As always, if there is an issue, question, or comment that a council member has, I ask that you identify the line item and the page number so that the rest of us can follow along at home. If we get too deep into the weeds, that might be a good time to put it on the circle back for further discussion. Okay, that having been said, according to the budget schedule, Mr. Grabowski, we're on legal, is that correct?
That is correct.
The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. As the mayor just indicated, we got through most of Public Works, at least the operations last time. We will be starting the utility fund in just a little bit, but we do want to start with legal. It is a small portion of the budget, but certainly significant, as you can imagine. With us is City Attorney Storino to answer any questions that you might have. Otherwise, Don, if you have any comments, I'll turn it to you.
Happy to be here. It's our 5th year, here in the city. Pleased to be working in such a terrific place. It has been a very busy year in the city of Elmhurst, I will say that. Keeping up with the city work that it does, the excellent work it does with respect to the stormwater, the attempts to manage that, the development that's gone on in the city. It has been a busy year for the legal department. It is also, as the city council clearly knows, we're in the midst of our collective bargaining negotiations, which likewise also is a cyclical thing. This is the year for that to be happening. So with that, Marilyn is the one who knows everything there is to know about what the legal department does, so I'll leave it to Marilyn.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Storino? Alderman Levin.
Thank you. I just wanted to see if I get some understanding on how the budget is put together, because we have gone up significantly over the last few years, and I do understand everything that happened this year. But even, I thought back in 2012, 2013, we had some union negotiations, so we're still up at a pretty high level at 450. Are there other things besides union negotiations then? Because we're looking another year beyond that, we're projecting 450 yet for another year.
The things that I would itemize or I would call out to the council are basically the work done with respect to flood work that was conducted, trying to keep up with implementing both policies, regulations, ordinances that the city council has implemented during the last year has been significant. Also had a major development with the NITI development. Significant amount of time and effort was dedicated to that particular project. I guess the rest, Alderman, would probably just be issues that the city council faced. This has been a very busy year.
I know you guys have done a lot of work. I'm just talking about going forward, what we're looking at in 15 and 16, I should say. Because 15 is union negotiations, but, and maybe Marilyn put the numbers together. I don't have any, I understand how much work was done in the current year.
You know, I say this every year, that the legal budget is one of the hardest budgets to put together, simply because it's, for the most part, a big unknown as to what's going to happen next year, what projects are coming up. If there's, we didn't plan that there was going to be another intergovernmental agreement put together with the school district, things of that nature. We just don't know. I did put the numbers together. Just based on where we are this year, I sort of continued that trend, that there wasn't going to be a let up in work that needed to be done. So, I mean, we can say, gosh, maybe it's going to be 400,000 and not 450,000. I don't really have a basis for that, and I tend to be more conservative, meaning I'm going to put a little bit more in there because something's going to happen.
Right, thank you, and I will comment to say that I as an attorney, I'm very pleased with the legal services that your firm has provided to us. It's been a pleasure to work with you guys.
Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if this is really for City Attorney Storino, maybe more for Marilyn on this. On page 169, I ask this all the time, line item 30-19, DUI prosecutions, and this might actually encompass the chief of police as well. We started, I think that it was the DUIs that we started prosecuting a ways back. So I always look then to see if doing it in-house is a revenue generator or a loss, and I tried to look at the revenue side on page 105 to kind of equate between the revenue and the expense side, and I wasn't able to do so. So I'm posing the question of, could maybe, Marilyn, you point me to the line items on the revenue side that would total up the revenue generated from us doing the DUI prosecutions in-house? Or even just a gut feel saying, you know, yes, it is still profitable to do it in-house versus we're getting to that line where it may not be profitable to do it in-house.
Okay. Actually, the line item you see on page 105, where it says court fines, DUI tech, that is not the proceeds from the fines for a DUI ticket. That's an add-on charge that is then segregated in this fund and has a very restricted use. When Chief Ruth comes up, he'll be able to talk about the expense side of that and what we use those DUI tech funds for specific equipment, for just very specific expenses that we have budgeted in the police budget. The actual fines that we receive from DUI tickets is going to be in court fines, which is on page 105, the first item 01-00 under fines and penalties. It's going to be contained in there. And you're right, there is sometimes some difficulty in matching the revenue that comes from that, because as I understand it, and I'm sure Chief Ruth can speak to it better than I can when he comes up just shortly, but there is a 1 to 2 year lag of when, is that correct? When the ticket is given and the prosecution occurs and when we really collect the fines. So there is a huge time lag on that. Now, one would think that would be consistent over time if the DUIs are consistent over time, and also Chief Ruth will be able to speak to that particular statistic. We have been doing them, as you say, in-house since I think about 2002, back in that time range. And without having specific numbers in front of me, I would definitely say it still is profitable for us, and just with the DUI Tech Fund and what we can purchase with that.
Thank you. My next question would be in regards to, and this is more general, I don't think we do, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, retainer with the city attorney today. Has the city considered that? Would that be more profitable from a city perspective compared to an attorney perspective? So is that something that we should look into? I know we've done that in the past, but is that a practice we should consider moving forward?
Alderman, you're correct that we're on an hourly basis with the attorney, and we have not talked about a retainer. We could explore that to see what would be mutually agreeable.
I know, and this is hard for at least myself as an elected official to say if it was a good thing to have a retainer in the past years, but I know the city of Elmhurst has done a retainer in the past. And as the Director of Finance just stated, it's very difficult to kind of have an educated guess on what the attorney costs will be. A retainer, I would think, would help a little bit in that, to some degree. But overall, I mean, it might be something that the city should look into, and maybe we should do a circle back item on that to come back at the end of the budget discussions.
Okay.
I would just say that we'd be happy to engage in that discussion with the city. We have a couple of, I mentioned to the manager, a couple of clients that have retainers, but they all end up being about the hours. So the retainer brings you to a certain number, and then if you exceed the number, I just want that when it really comes down to the end of the day, it's about how many hours is the municipal unit of government spending. So.
Agreed.
If I may say, I think it's worth noting that the hourly rate from the city attorney's firm has not changed in the 5 years that they have been with the city.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Storino? Okay. Don, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
On to the police department.
Circle back, or are we good? Are we circling back?
No, we're circling back. He asked for it, so
We could have canceled it with that one.
I don't think he will.
I would just like to turn it over to Chief Ruth for some comments and then questions.
Chief, floor's yours.
Thank you. Good evening. And just want to highlight a few things that the police department has done during the budget year. And we've had some very good success in those areas. One of the goals and objectives were to have the police force be much more visible, much more engaging, and interactive with our public and our community. And we've done this during this budget year. One of the initiatives that we did was a neighborhood roll call. And we were able to bring police officers into the residents, or into the neighborhoods and into the residential communities to meet with the residents of our community. And we did some tallies and numbers, and we ended up engaging and interacting with 900 of our residents during this summer period. We increased the number of bicycle patrols during the budget difficult years. We had reduced that and cut it out, so we had reactivated that. And in addition, we also implemented residential foot patrols to put police officers in neighborhoods on foot, as well as in our parks, and engaging with our young people. The DARE program continues to move forward, and our school resource officers we've got 2 of them in place now that that have brought some new life to the program, and they're very engaged with our junior highs as well. So those are just some of the initiatives that we did during this budget year. Getting to the budget, there's a couple of items that I did want to bring out forward to you that are noteworthy with regard to the upcoming budget. And under our capital budget, under 8023, we've got some fairly significant expenditures. Last year, our goal was to replace the gutters at the police station. The police headquarters is coming up on the 24 to 25-year mark, and as a result, we're experiencing some leakage in the gutters. We put in the budget last year, but apparently they're unique to the building, so the numbers came in over what we had budgeted for, so we had pushed it out to 2015 at 110. We're also in year 2 of 2 for redoing the heating and air conditioning system. Last budget year, we replaced some electronics in the computer system, and then the upcoming year, we're going to be replacing the pneumatic controls and switching it over to electrical controls. And the biggest one is we experienced some shifting in the columns at police headquarters. They've shifted, depending on the column, 3 to 4 inches, so they've shifted, so it's going to require some structural engineering, and we're projecting that in conjunction with Public Works at almost $200,000. Some other significant increases that you will see is in our minor equipment fund. We've increased it by $5,000, and the purpose for that is to replace some of the handguns that our police officers are using. The current handguns the officers are carrying are 16 years old, and what we've done is we've identified replacement on these handguns for a 2-year budget cycle, which means we're going to be replacing it $5,000 worth out of this year's budget, and then our goal is to replace the remaining $5,000 out of next year's budget. So that will replace all the handheld weapons that the officers have. And again, they've reached their life expectancy. A new area that you'll see is 30-92, which is called contract staffing. Several years ago, when a full-time position had left in records, we replaced it with a part-time position. And we had that salary in under the part-time salaries. So this was just a way for us to take it out of part-time funding and call it contract staffing, because that, in essence, what it is it's a contract employee that doesn't receive benefits or pension funding. And the final one is DUCOM 30.18, and we're anticipating approximately a 5% increase for DUCOM's operations. So with that said, those are the highlights. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them.
Okay, questions for the chief? Chris Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question on salaries. Looking at the budgeted 2014 amount to the estimated, and I'm on page 140, all of the 10 dash items. The 2014 budget was 8.73 million, 783 million, estimated at 8.268. Even if you throw in that 30,800 hours that you were just talking about, we're significantly under budget. Is there something specific that's driving that? Is that just kind of the way events shifted, so we didn't need as much overtime, we didn't need as much staff time? But when I see a sizable reduction in budget, which obviously is a good thing, I'm just curious, is that something we're doing differently, or is that just the way things fell this year?
Yeah, there's a couple factors with that. As far as the overtime line at 10.0, I'm sorry, 10.03. We're going to hit the holiday season, so as a result, we'll see Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in terms of overtime holiday pay, and it comes out of that. So we'll see that kind of increase very, very quickly. That's one area. The other area is we've, beginning part of the year, we tried to operate a little more conservatively with regard to overtime expenditures, watching it a little tighter. But then, of course, we're going to see that number go up as a result of some extra patrols that we've placed out there as a result of the residential burglaries that have occurred. So it ebbs and flows, but we'll be hitting the high season. I think our goal is to come in under budget.
Thank you. Alderman Gutenkopf?
I'd like to follow up on that salary because your part-time wages look like you're understaffed. And it seems to me that this 2014 estimate is your target spend for the year. So if your target spend for the year is so much under budget, is that because there are some open positions in the police department?
Yes, there are. We budgeted for 14 part-time police officers, and unfortunately, we currently have 9. We've experienced some difficulty in hiring part-time police officers. So, although that remains a priority for us, we just have not been able to fill those vacancies.
Just to follow up.
Yeah.
So, as you look forward and considering the difficulty you have finding part-timers, is this something that you're going to eventually consider using full-time staff instead of hiring part-time staff? Is it easier to find full-time officers than part-time officers? Does this change the way you think about your staffing of the department overall?
The current way we utilize our part-time officers is they usually patrol between 6 p.m. and midnight or 6 p.m. and 2 a.m. They patrol the downtown district, the parking structures, the parking garages. They do prisoner transports and other specialized directed patrol areas, so we're able to keep our full-time officers dedicated to their areas of patrol. By putting full-timers in those vacancies, there's a significant cost to that, and we'd end up having to pay the overtime rate for police officers, which could be about $70 an hour versus approximately 23. So, you know, we want to make sure that we hire the right people, and it is a goal for us to try to get to full strength.
So it's not really changing the way you're thinking about how you're going to staff. You're still looking to find the right part-time staff to bring yourself up to full strength. So with the being understaffed like that, how does that affect the department's ability to manage those functions? So without being able to, have a full complement of part-time staff, does that change your ability to manage those functions and patrolling those areas?
Yeah, not at this time. We're able to schedule heavier during Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, the football games, special events, the turkey trot and whatnot. So if we were able to come up to full strength, we would have those staffing during perhaps what we refer to as less than peak times, which would be Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, possibly Thursday. Our big heavy time is going to be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that's our primary goal in terms of staffing. And then depending on the staffing availability of our personnel, those other days. So our goal is to get up to full complement. We'd like to do.
Thank you.
Alderman Bram?
Thank you. A few questions, but to stay on the wages line item for a second, which again is page 140, part-time being 10-02. My assumption then is, Chief, that for 2015, the current dollars that are allocated for part-time, is that with the assumption that we will be at 14 part-time officers, or is that a reduction since we're having a hard time today and we're only at 9 today? Are we staffing somewhere in between the 9 and 14 for 2015?
A little bit of both. When we moved the contract staffing The part-time records person, people that we were using were 2 part-timers. They were included in the part-time wages. So when that changed, we see a reduction in that particular line item. So that was one thing. The other is we took a look at the ability to get people on board and trained, and we just looked at some realistic numbers by thinking, we're not going to get up to that full complement within the first 2 or 3 months of the year. So as a result, we kind of adjusted those numbers accordingly.
But the assumption is 2015 would be 14 part-time police officers, correct?
That's our goal.
Okay. The next question would be in regards to deer. I saw deer revenue, I think it was like $3,500 or something in page 105 or somewhere around there. But on page 141 for expenditures, I don't see any dollars, which is line item 60-14.
Yes.
So could I get a clarification on why I saw revenue and no expenditures?
Well, actually, the expenditure comes out of a different account. We are taking the DARE program and the K-9 program out of the asset forfeiture funds. So instead of taking it out of the general fund and affecting the taxpayers, we made the decision to utilize the asset forfeiture funds, and that is an authorized expenditure for those type of expenditures. In terms of the revenue, there's from time to time we will get a person who wishes to remain anonymous that would like to make a donation to the DARE program to assist with that, and I believe that's where they put that revenue in.
Okay, and when you refer to the asset forfeiture, I can't say it, and it's early on in the evening, funds, is that line item 60-27 on page 141? I'm referring to expenses.
27, yes. Forfeiture expenditures, yes.
Okay. No other questions?
Alderman Palomsky?
Thank you. Alderman Bram asked part of the question about DARE, and I was curious. We were discussing during the review of the city survey that one of the top 5 concerns is that residents are aware and concerned about heroin use in the community, and just wanted to know if you would see a need for community training, community awareness, or an increase in budgeting, or how your involvement with the community may change to help educate and maybe prevent use.
Yes, I think the police department views the drug problem in a multi-pronged approach. Number one, it's through prevention and education. So it's going to be prevention, education, and enforcement. And with regard to the first 2, we don't have specific funding earmarked. However, it is available under the asset forfeiture fund for any expenditures that we may have. I should point out, though, that this year, 2014, over the summer, the police department purchased a drug take-back box that was installed in the lobby of the police station. And we purchased that box with asset forfeiture funds, and I'm quite impressed with the amount and the volume of prescription drugs that are being dropped off at the police station. It's being emptied out on a daily basis. So what that does is that's helping us get prescription drugs out of the hands of our youth. It's preventing prescription drugs from going into the water system and polluting the water system. So those are good things. We're participating, I know, within this month to have some discussions that address the issue of drugs and heroin. Heroin just one component that's getting a lot of attention lately. But the use of cannabis, the use of or the abuse of pharmaceutical drugs, prescription drugs, and cocaine is still out there as well. The police department has been trained, and all of the officers have Narcan, which is a neutralizer. In the event we come in contact with somebody that's in an overdose phase for heroin or an opiate. And currently, the antidote that we have, the Narcan, is being supplied by the DuPage County Health Department, but of course, that funding could stop or change. So again, those particular monies would be available, or that expenditure would be available out of asset forfeiture for us. And in addition, we recently gave Narcan to the SROs, the school resource officers, to carry on their belt, so in the event that they come into something. Year to date, since they rolled out the Narcan program, probably in the spring of this year, the Elmhurst Police Department has had 3 saves, where we've saved 3 people who would have died of a heroin overdose if we didn't use Narcan on them.
Alderman Dunn?
Just a couple questions. We're talking now about the license plate recognition camera in a pilot project at no charge right now. Is there any budget for that next year anywhere?
Currently, I've placed nothing in the budget for that expenditure.
Okay, all right. You talked a lot about forfeiture funds. The forfeiture expense was fairly high this year. It's a pretty healthy sum. What are those activities that are creating that type of expense that we're paying for?
We currently have an officer that's detailed to the Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, and he's part of an interdiction unit that targets high-level drug dealers and drug cartels. And as a result of arrests that his unit has made, oftentimes when an arrest is made, you have the drugs, and we're talking very, very large volume of drugs or narcotics. And usually there's a significant amount of money that's with those as well. So as a result, at the end of the adjudication process, if those dollars are found to be have an illegal connection to the narcotics, there is a judicial procedure and process in place where those funds can be forfeited. If the funds are forfeited, they are awarded to the agencies that have participated in that arrest.
And what is the expense, though, of that? Is it that person's salary and benefits?
It's the officer that's detailed out to DEA, correct.
Okay.
We also utilize that particular officer in the event that if we have something here in town, we bring him back in town, and he has all the resources from DEA available to him that he can utilize that as well.
Last question is, I've had some communications with Chief Ruth recently about animal control, specifically skunk control. I had a lot of complaints from residents. Is that anything we're looking more closely at? I see $5,000 in the budget, which is fairly consistent with what we've seen in previous years. Is there going to be any change in the approach? The residents are very interested in that issue.
Yeah, I can address that. Approximately 5 or 6 years ago, perhaps longer than that, I think there was significant discussion at the city council, and this was when we were trying to reduce our expenses. And so the decision was made to change the philosophy and move away from city staff trapping and taking care of wildlife to providing names and phone numbers, contact information for trappers that are out there, with the resident paying that cost. Our philosophy has not changed. If you'd like to have some discussion over that, certainly we can.
We can follow up with that. I don't think it's worthy of a circle back. Take that offline.
Alderman Levin, then I'll go to Alderman Mulliner.
I just wanted to, I thought the relationship between line 6027, the forfeiture expenses, was tied into, on page 106, line 200, the forfeiture proceeds. Is that, Marilyn, is that correct? So if in 15 and 16, we're looking at proceeds of 180, and we're looking at the same amount in expenses.
Yes.
So, Chief, you were talking about things that are being paid for out of forfeiture funds such as DARE, and you mentioned some other things. It doesn't seem like they're really going to be any excess proceeds over expenses.
Yes, we're required to spend the asset forfeiture funds that we receive within 3 years. We utilize it for other things. There are vehicles that we've purchased. For 2015, we're looking at refurbishing and rehabbing the investigation section at the 25-year mark, and need some new carpeting, new desks, and things of that nature. Those are approved and authorized expenses. Again, if the asset forfeitures are not used within 3 years, they're subject to.
Well, I mean, I see this year there's a surplus and you have to spend it, but it just seems like if you're spending what you're taking in, there's nothing left in that year. So if you spend everything that's left over at the end of this year, and then next year your proceeds and your expenses equal each other, then are we going to have a shortfall in some of the programs that we anticipated being funded by excess proceeds, because I don't see them here.
Yeah. We took a conservative estimate in terms of the revenue that's coming in. There's no guarantee for what is going to be there, of course, but at the present time, there's more in the asset forfeiture funds than are earmarked for expenditures at this time.
If I could just add that we do keep track of that. You don't see it in this budget document, but we do with many items like this, where we have dedicated revenues coming in and then we have the expenditures going out. We do keep track of that in a separate sort of balance sheet. So you can see, like back in 2012-13, our forfeiture expense was about $79,000, but our income was $266,000. So we carried that over. So we have a balance in forfeiture income account, so to speak, that we're always carrying forward and using, and it's being monitored by Chief Ruth and his group to make sure that 3 years we are spending the money. But what you can't see here is what we have in that balance.
So that's another line where that fund would show up, like the excess fund from previous years that's accumulated?
You won't see it in this budget. It in effect is part of the fund balance. If the general fund balance is $10 million, part of that fund balance is going to be what is left to be used of that forfeiture revenue that we have not used yet.
And so where does it show as being an expenditure then, a line item where if they want to spend it on DARE, there's money left over? Where does that show up in our budget?
It doesn't show up in your budget. You don't see that here. You see a revenue line on a year-by-year basis coming in. Am I correct, Tom? And the expense going out on a year-by-year basis. And what we keep that you don't see here is that offset, the revenues coming in, and we're carrying forward a balance. At some point, they may be using it all. I mean, these are good days that we're getting as much money as we have. That has not always been the case. Often those dollars have been much, much tighter than what we're seeing here. And we did not have a balance.
All right.
What we can do, if it would help, not necessarily as a circle back, but we can provide to you what that balance is. We can show you sort of our balance sheet offline, so to speak.
All right, because it just concerns me that there's a fund that collects and gets spent from that nobody here sees.
Right, and it is the expense side, but you see the expense side and you see the revenue side. You do see those two pieces.
But the expense is the expense of getting the revenue. So there's the expense of getting the revenue, then you have revenue, and if it exceeds the expense, it goes into a fund. Then it's spent out of a fund.
Oh, no, the revenue that's coming in is that line item on page 106. You see the expense, the revenue coming in. The expense that you see on page 141, 6027, is what we're spending those proceeds on. So that expense is not the expense to get the revenue. The expense to get the revenue is the officer's salary.
So
The
6027 is what we're spending on programs, or
6027 is what we're spending that revenue on. I'm sorry, I totally misunderstood your question. I apologize. Does that help?
yes.
I
yes.
apologize.
If I can add, the expense for the officer is in the salary line item. That is in the DEA. So that's part of the normal salary expenditure. But the revenue from it is transferred from the fund. Pay for that.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Mulliner.
I want to go back to animal control for a minute. This is probably one of the areas that I don't get many calls, and not many people talk to me about issues, but this is one of them that they do talk about. And my recollection of what we had done with the animal control situation was that we had bad budget times, so we removed that position. We didn't philosophically say that we never wanted to see it come back. I think it was primarily focused on we had bad budget times, so what we would do as a temporary solution was to provide trappers, a list of trappers available. I believe that this is an item that I would like to circle back on and have a little bit more discussion about, and let's look at the benefits to coming back with putting back in an animal control person, whether it's part-time or full-time, because I think this is a really important thing for us to do to help the city out, because there are a lot of issues with it, and a lot of people are very confused about what they can do and can't do with trapping. So I think we need to have that discussion as a council. So I would like to circle back to that.
Okay. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I think this year, as in all years, we encourage folks to call 911 to report any suspicious activity. So we're really encouraging folks to call. And I think it's important that for the folks who do call, they get a positive experience and that call is well received on the other end. We've talked a little bit about this. Does the city have any opportunity to monitor quality control, or what happens on the other end of the lines? What is the quality control component for DUCOM?
The quality control for DUCOM is really self-generated by them, unless there's a complaint. From our end, from our perspective, then we would go in and pull the tapes. But if someone calls the non-emergency number at the police station, presently those lines are not taped, so we don't have the ability to review or monitor those.
I have another question. Alderman Dunn mentioned the automated license plate readers. Has that been installed?
Yes, it has.
And are we planning to do a press release or any kind of getting that word out? It seems to me that some of the benefit of it might be, maybe we've already done it. It seems like some of the benefit might be as a deterrent, and that only works if we get the word out. And I haven't seen a press release. Maybe I missed it.
Yes, we did issue a release on that last week. I can't recall the exact date. Happy to give you another copy. Completely agree with you that part of the use of the camera was as a deterrent as well, which is the reason that we tried to get out ahead of that.
Any other opportunities for increasing public awareness of its existence? We just rely on the press to pick it up, and that will be the piece.
I believe all papers have covered it. All the papers that cover Elmhurst have put a story in about that.
Any other questions? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following up on Alderman Deuter's question about quality control, DUCOM versus in-house Elmhurst Police Station, Chief, you responded back with in-house. Currently today, we don't record calls coming in, the conversations that occur. I don't want to dive too deep into it because it will derail the discussion here, but is that something that has been evaluated within your very short tenure, or something that you think would be useful going forward and maybe we'll see in an upcoming budget cycle? I think it's something, at least, is an intriguing idea, to say the very least. And I think due diligence, at least on that topic, would be, at least in my opinion, valid.
I'll address that from the standpoint of customer service training. And that is something that I plan to talk with the directors about very shortly, as to how we can implement something comprehensive in the new year as far as customer service training, particularly phone training, rather than starting to record phone calls. It's technology that we can look at if the police department feels it's necessary, but I'd rather address that on the proactive side of customer service training.
And I think that's a good avenue to take, but at least, again, I'm just brainstorming here, but on my perspective, it's not only the customer service perspective, but potentially, and knock on wood, thank goodness we haven't had that yet, but liability perspective as well. So those are the two things that jump out at me when we talk about something along those lines. So again, Chief, if you want to respond tonight, that's fine, or just discuss it further within, that's fine as well. But I just thought it was an idea that was just brought up and something to get some more feedback on.
One other item, we are looking at a new phone system, which would be a voice over IP, and so that may have the ability to accomplish what you're talking about, Alderman.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Ruth? Chief, thanks for your time and your hard work.
Mayor, if I can address one other item that Alderman Palomsky brought up, and that was the issue of the drug abuse in the survey. And right now, I think, as Chief Ruth said, we're in more of an education and awareness kind of phase, which really doesn't entail too many more expenses. What Chief alluded to was there are a number of groups that are out there that are becoming aware of the issue, and we, of course, seem to be the central connector of all of those. Representative Belloc is sponsoring a session on that. The Youth Commission has coordinated something, and most recently the Rotary Club has invited a number of community leaders together next week to talk about the issue and what they can do. And I suspect, I haven't talked with them directly, I've talked to the president or emailed back and forth, that they may be interested in trying to raise some funds to do that as well. So while there may not be a direct expense in the budget, it's certainly an issue that we're trying to address.
Okay. Thanks again, Chief. HR?
With the HR department continues to support the city by developing and managing employee resources, including staffing, training, and development of city staff and compensation and benefits. Human Resources also administers the city's risk management program, doing safety audits and training. For example, one of the things they've recently done is in the fleet maintenance garage, bought a tire balancer with an automated arm lift and a tire lift for putting the tires on the vehicles to help reduce the risk of neck, shoulder, and back injuries. HR department also is liaison to the Board of Police and Fire Commissioners, facilitating the hiring of police officers and firefighters. And most recently, they worked with the Board of Police and Fire Commissioners with the new rules and regulations. HR is also liaison to the Insurance Committee. If you remember back in 2012, with the help of the labor groups, an insurance committee was formed to look at the current health benefits and ways of providing the insurance and health care at the most efficient manner. An outcome of the committee was a high deductible health plan, which almost 25% of the employee group moved from the PPO plan. The high deductible plan strives to reduce city costs for health insurance by making the employee a more educated consumer and advocate for their own health care. During this year's open enrollment, we'll work on educating, again, all the city employees to make them the best educated decisions on their health care. They're also the liaison to the Wellness Committee. The Wellness Program is run by a committee of employees represented from all departments, including the library. And the program is designed to be holistic. Some of the things that it involves are biometric screening, weight loss programs, nutrition, and flu shots. And an example of 2014, the Wellness Committee developed and implemented Got Fit in Elmhurst, which is an eight-week program challenging employees to earn points for pounds lost, exercise, nutrition activities. 204 employees participated. Some of the highlights in the budget, you'll see in 3052 professional services, and the HR budget includes $30,000 for development and implementation of a performance management system, which coincides with the newly adopted compensation policy. And also $30,000 for organizational-wide training that includes employee development, safety, customer service, harassment prevention. And then there's $10,000 that are allocated for strategic planning and organizational development for the management team. And I'll be glad to answer any specific questions regarding HR.
Any questions? Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if this will be for the assistant city manager or the city manager, but you've both now mentioned the customer service and customer service training. Is that something that's going to be a function, Alderman, City Manager Grabowski, is that something that's a function, is the training you were talking about somehow connected to the $30,000 here in this budget, or are they separate? The customer training that you were talking about, is that separate?
It is directly related to that.
Okay, can you just describe it a little bit of what it is, what the goals are?
Well, what I want to do is get together with the department directors to talk about what we've done in the past, what's worked, what hasn't worked, some ideas that they may have as far as who to bring in for that. Is it a full-blown Disney training institute or something less than that? I'm not sure. I'd also like to look at partnerships with possibly the Park District to see if we can do something that's a little bit bigger, that's the school district, something like that, where we can really combine our efforts together.
So the 30,000 is a placeholder to be used for whatever is identified as necessary?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. Two simple ones. On page 127, line item 60-11, conference, seminars, and training. I know there's no J-form because it doesn't meet the J-form requirements, but the expense line item did go up 40%. Again, in the grand scheme of things, pretty small, from $5,000 to $7,000. But what are we going on? Additional off-campus training sessions, conferences, or why do we see such a huge, relatively speaking here, but spike in that line item?
That is part of it. I know we cut a lot of the, like national conference and stuff out of the budgets over the last few years. We're starting to put some of that back in there. There's also 2 members of HR that need continuing education credits to maintain their certifications. And that's cyclical, so they need so much at certain times.
And then the other question is in regards to employee relations. Just curious on what that really encompasses.
That's part of it's the service awards for milestones, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. You get a special gift from the city for amount of service. That's also for the employee events, maybe retirements and things of that nature, or even after real tough times, after floods and stuff like that, we'll buy lunch, on those days for the employees and stuff like that. And then there's also money in there for, when someone's hospitalized or has a baby or something like that, to buy a plant or something like that, form of flowers.
Thank you.
Alderman Dunn.
The $30,000 for the performance management consulting, is that the strategic planning effort, or is this something different?
No, that's something different. That is, it was like step 2 of the compensation policy that's put in place, is that with the new compensation policy, performance-based salaries or performance-based raises type of thing, we're going to be put in place. We've had different performance management systems in the past, and we're looking at developing a new performance management system to evaluate performance of all the different employees. And this will be a new one that's sort of more tied into the new compensation policy that we have in place now.
Is that new set of hardware and software that we have to purchase?
No, it's mostly more, no, it's really, there is some software involved with it, but it is mostly just the, bring in a consultant to help us develop it and do all the training. The training's a big part of it.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on.
The Board and Police and Fire Commission.
Yep.
And the only thing I want to mention on that is 3052, you'll see a spike in that. And that's pretty much solely due to polygraph exams that we do when we're hiring police and police officers and firefighters. Due to the testing cycles that we're in right now and an increase in the cost of doing those, that's why there's an increase in that line item.
Any questions? All right, next. IT?
The IT department continues to manage the city's computer, data, and voice technologies and provides maintenance and repair services for all city departments and employees. In 2014, the IT department processed over 7 million emails and recycled close to 3,000 pounds of electronics. The IT department recently upgraded our file servers and our web servers due to an unexpected failure of both systems, which prompted us to evaluate the virtual backup of all city servers at an offsite location. We're currently in discussions with other government agencies for the possibility of setting up a backup server room in another city building. And as part of the evaluation, our IT department continues to evaluate the cost of establishing an Elmhurst wide area fiber network. And upgrading our wide area network to provide larger bandwidth is essential. With large amounts of data and video being transported over the network, the current bandwidth is quickly becoming obsolete. As you are aware, the city just recently approved a contract with Comcast to provide a fiber network to our facilities. And this upgrade network will give us the capability to originate Channel 6 programming live from City Hall. And will allow people to watch city council meetings live as they do with AT&T now. So Comcast customers will be able to do that also. And then during that contract period, we're going to look at the possibility of installing our own fiber network throughout the city as part of our street lighting program. We're going to be doing new street lighting and new wiring in the street lighting, and part of that is laying conduit throughout the city from all the street lights. And we think we can strategically locate conduits alongside that to our facilities and maybe other government facilities and provide our own fiber network at the end of the contract term right now with Comcast. We're going to continue to evaluate. We do have some pipe in the ground right now, and we do major street repairs, and the streets got to be opened up. We'll lay conduit in there for future use for fiber or whatever else would need to be done. As far as the budget, I'd like to draw your attention to the capital outlay 8003 for the proposed calendar year. $7 in this budget are predominantly for PC and laptop replacements. The warranty on the current equipment has expired, and to keep all users at an equal compatibility level is most efficient to replace all units at the same time. Not only due to the warranty issues, but the PCs we're operating currently are working off Windows 7, and any new units will most likely be operating on Windows 9. So we like to purchase them all at one time to keep the operating systems consistent. And 8098 breaks down to two major projects. $400,000 in the implementation of the new VoIP phone system that the city manager talked about earlier, and $150,000 is for the possibility of electronic signs at the Palmer Underpass. Last, I want to bring your attention to the total IT budget. Once it's established, all IT service and expenditures are allocated as interdepartmental charges to all other departments. You can find on page 376 of the budget book the breakdown of these charges to all departments. The allocation is based on the number of computers assigned to each area. So as you look through the budget book, you'll see at 9501 in each department's budget the data processing fees for interdepartmental charges. And any specific questions for IT, I'll be glad to answer.
Alderman Palomsky?
Thanks. I have a couple. Looking at 80-31, computer software, why such a big difference between the budgeted and the estimated amount? Computer software.
I think that was the ERP system was in that computer software for this year, and we moved that out 2 years. Let's look at the enterprise resource plan.
And then our website has been down a few times recently.
That was, the last two times, well, the web server was, when it crashed, was one time went down, but this last weekend it was down. Civic Plus is who's, hosts our website, does updates on the weekends. When they did the update this weekend, there was a configure file that they did not upgrade properly and caused our system to go down.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While we're on the topic of the website, our website has been pretty much the same design for a long period of time. We have quite an incredible amount of information on there, and it's getting to the point where I hear from residents how difficult it is for them to navigate. What are our future plans for the website, and do we have any sense of how long it's going to be before we can really give it a robust overhaul?
That is hopefully still this year. We've been working with our vendor right now. We've just had some meetings with them in the last couple of weeks as far as what are opportunities in upgrading our system. But we plan on doing that in the really near future.
We're still planning to do it this year. Is that,
It's in this year's budget. Whether we get it done this year or not, we will know. We'll may have to carry those dollars over to get it accomplished early next year. But we are in the talks with Civic Plus at this time to look at the upgrading of the system.
And how much are we expecting to spend on that upgrade?
I think it was around $100,000. Was it?
And is that expected to cover a major redesign? Are we looking at doing some,
We're looking at, Civic Plus has the next version available, which gives it more flexibility in how we design it. If you look at the way it is right now, it's sort of restricted as far as what you can put where. And there's more flexibility in doing that now. We're probably looking at just going to an upgrade with the vendor we have right now because of cost. It gets really expensive if we're going to start from scratch on that. But the opportunities that we have with Civic Plus right now, some of the upgrades they have, we think can accomplish the things we want to do.
so that'll give us an opportunity to do some online bill pay or that kind of?
Yeah, a lot of that's on there right now, but it's going to be more robust to be able to do more of it.
I guess I'm thinking more in terms of a real information architecture redesign. Is that what we're talking about?
That will be part of it.
Okay.
Alderman Healy.
Two questions. The first one will piggyback off Alderman Gutenkopf's. So when we go to this new system, will we have the opportunity to e-bill, not just pay online, but to get an electronic version of your water bill so we don't have to potentially mail as many out? Is that part of that structure?
No, that's not part of the web server, no.
Okay, are we looking at that kind of
That's an
technology?
opportunity. Finance is looking at those opportunities at this time.
Okay. And then my second question, going back to the conversation we had last week with the museum, got to be honest, to hear a credit card reader was down for 2 months was a little shocking. I equate that to IT. Maybe staff doesn't define it as such, but is credit card transaction, I know we do them here in City Hall consistently, is that same technology available to the museum? And if so, why were we down for 2 months? And if not, can we make it so?
I will attempt to answer your question, and if I can't, I think Tom Trozine should be able to help me, or Mike Stenson. The credit card administrator made some major changes, and those changes were not compatible. We tried, Mike Stenson tried to work with them, work with our systems. They didn't talk to each other. It did not work. We were able to work with another system, another supplier, to keep us up on our day-to-day activity here at City Hall, on our website, pay water bills. Really, water bills weren't included. Paying parking fines were, and we are at this point back in business on that. Am I correct, Mike?
Almost. We just installed the case management module, and we're going through a training process.
So it was a bit more complex than what one would think. So we had that piece. We had a system at the police station. We tried to prioritize what we felt was most important, what got the attention first. Police department got the attention first. City Hall got the attention second. The parking fines online got the attention third. The museum got the attention fourth. They are now online. They now have the credit card reader over there. The equipment was ordered. We have it. I mean, it had been already ordered, it was before last week. It is now online. There'll be training going on in the next couple of weeks that Mike Stenson will handle. It's a matter of time allocation as to how the systems were brought up.
So if I may, so when you say time allocation, is that time allocation from a City of Elmhurst staff perspective, or the credit card provider, or the servicing provider?
More from the City of Elmhurst staff standpoint. Some was the credit card provider, because we tried to work with their system to the point, because we didn't want to have to change, and it didn't work. Then we had to go out and find alternative methods. Am I correct, Mike?
Yeah, Civic Plus is a payment module that was currently in beta.
Can you use the mic?
Sorry about that. Civic Plus, which is our content management system provider, has a credit card payment system at that time that was in beta. It's now in production, so we are looking at that as an option to do credit card payments online. We did install a new credit card reader, which has the new smart card ability at the museum, and we are going to transition our other credit card readers to that same technology.
Okay, so anywhere the city takes credit cards then will be on this system, and will be, updated at the same time, so we don't have these lags. I mean, honestly, it's a little concerning to hear that we are months behind some departments getting updated credit card technology in today's age. That's a little concerning to me.
Yeah, it's just how the technology is rolled out. For instance, our water billing system uses a separate merchant provider, which has been up and running, so people can pay their water bills online. Parking tickets was through our current website, and when our current provider changed their programming language, was not compatible with our website. We then looked at alternative solutions, and Civic Plus was almost there, but they do have their payment engine out of beta, and it's in production.
So the Civic Plus, I think you said, they're going to be our credit card servicing.
They'll be the software on the front end, but our main provider is through our current banking, which is Fifth Third. So the merchant gateway system ultimately resolves through Fifth Third Bank.
So everybody be on, every city department that takes credit cards will be on the same system, up to date, shouldn't have 2-month lags.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. One more question, if I may. Also related to the museum, I heard last week that some of the program signups were done in conjunction with the Park District. Are we looking to continue that, partner with the Park District, take advantage of something they're doing? How, what is the IT plan for signing up, program signups at the museum? What's the long-term plan there?
Anytime we can partner with the Park District, the school district, the library, whomever it is, we're going to do that. As far as the registration, if if the other agency has that capability in place where they can register and then send us whatever revenue it is, whatever we work out, we'd work it that way. But I know that we do have some registration, some limited class or event registration. I don't know that we charge for those at all. I think there has been a move by the foundation and the museum staff to try something like that. I think Brian talked a little bit about that as far as non-members perhaps paying a fee to attend an event. And I'm not sure if that's handled directly through the foundation or the museum staff. We can get back to you.
Well, I'm less concerned about the how or the why. I'm more concerned with who's making those decisions, and are these decisions being made at spur of the moment, or is this part of the plan? Is this part of the museum or the IT department's plan for how we're going to take program registration for museum programs? Because some of the answers what I heard last week was a little bit of a surprise. I think it's great if we're taking advantage of another government's, if the park district's ahead of us in that regard, great, let's partner with them. But is that part of the plan, or was that just hey, let's go do that because they have it? That's what I want to know is and if the strategic plan is coming from the museum, I would expect that this be addressed as part of that strategic plan. I would assume it would be. Am I correct in that assumption, or no?
Yes, it is part of the strategic plan as far as the partnerships.
Okay.
Absolutely, that's part of the planning long-term.
And specific for IT, I'll call it IT-related issues, like how are we going to take program registrations over the internet? Is the IT plan, we're going to partner with the park district, or are we going to do this ourselves when we change the interface?
Yeah, I'd really have to talk to Brian to see what him and his staff have talked through as far as long-term.
Okay.
So if I could defer to the circle back on that.
Sure. Absolutely.
Alderman Gutenkauf? Alderman Brand?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few things, two of which my colleagues to either side of me have already touched on, but I want to dig down a little bit deeper on them. As Alderman Healy already stated, having the credit card reader, not the online payment is my understanding, but the credit card reader being down for an extended period of time, albeit the museum, is concerning. And I'm glad to hear that we're making steps in the right direction. I want to touch on that a little bit deeper from, the latest and greatest technology, and I think Mr. Stenson already touched on it a little bit. Will all these readers throughout the city of Elmhurst have NFC capability, Apple Pay capability, and so we're not going back in time and only being able to use a credit card, but those who will be utilizing a telephone for everything that they do in the future will be able to do so anywhere in the city of Elmhurst. Is that the direction we're going, from at least credit payments within the city of Elmhurst?
Our current direction from Fifth Third is to accept smart cards. They're mandated by next July to have all of our credit card readers accept smart card and PIN access, but we can look at near-field communication and Apple Pay as an alternative and work with Fifth Third to make sure they'll accept that type of payment too.
Okay, I think that would be a good direction to go if we're moving to upgrade or move to the latest and greatest. Smart cards is one piece of that puzzle, but I think NFC, and now that Apple, of course, has their own technology, but now that Apple Pay is being rolled out as well, I think we're going to see more and more of that compared to people bringing their credit cards wherever they go as well. Alderman Gutenkauf's statements in regards to the website, I know it's seems like it's been a long time, and it probably has since we revamped it. One of the things I just wanted to highlight was the search capability isn't, at least in my opinion and from what I've heard, the best. So it sounds like our provider from a standpoint of the website itself, do they just do the template and we fill in the content, and therefore that's why we're restricted to the website? And as Assistant City Manager Kopp said, it doesn't sound like we're moving away from the template, or are we changing the template and therefore we'll have more flexibility within the website and overall website design?
Yeah, there is some change in the template. That's one thing that's quite restrictive right now is the template. We'll fill in the content, but the upgrade will allow more flexibility in that. The one thing that will be upgraded also is the search
That's definitely good news, because it is, the way it is today, at least the feedback I've heard, it is very difficult to find things, and then you go into the search functionality, and it doesn't always return back what you're looking for, even though it's somewhere hidden in the overall website. One of the things I missed talking about the credit cards again, is the city from a strategic standpoint thinking of having, I'll call them portable credit card readers, like what are they called, the Square, where you plug it into your iPad or any other maybe Droid device, where we would be able to use it at remote locations, various events throughout the city, et cetera, something along those lines?
At this time, we have not talked about that, but something we'll look into as the need presents itself.
And then the last thing you mentioned about the laptop replacements, I assume with technology today, most departments within the city of Elmhurst does not need the horsepower of a desktop. Is that the case? Are we transitioning, or have we already transitioned to pretty close to pure laptops within the city and having all the documentation, et cetera, in I was gonna say offline, but servers? Or are we still moving towards desktops and laptops and servers, et cetera?
At most are desktop. There are, I think, 30 laptops. That's the right one.
Yeah, I mean, the desktop scenario does outperform the laptop on a day-to-day basis. Some of the laptops are used occasionally. Some of the desktops are used for more than 8 hours. From a performance standpoint, it's better to use a desktop than a laptop.
Okay. My experience in the engineering world is that pretty much we moved to laptops, and that's why I thought it would be better overall for any staff employee, if they're going to a meeting, et cetera, taking notes, that they would be able to take it from their desk and move the laptop along with the information to wherever they may be. So that's why I was asking that question from more of an efficiency standpoint, because laptops have a lot of horsepower now. That's it. Thanks.
Gutenkauf?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under line 8098, we've talked about the electronic sign for the underpass for a long time now. It's $150,000. I don't have the advantage in front of me of any of our previous conversations. So what I'd like to do is to really test this. I really want to understand what this is saving us in the long run in terms of staff time, hanging banners. I understand the safety component means that there's just a sign up there and we're programming it. And that's an important consideration, but I think because it's $150,000, I'd like to put this on the circle back with a lot more detail on what we're gaining with the electronic sign, what we're saving in staff time, how much it's costing us now to put banners on the overpass, and what you think any expanded capacity we're going to have for this electronic sign over what we could do now.
Okay. Any other questions? Move on.
Planning Zone Economic Development Department continues to focus on building a strong tax base for the city of Elmhurst. The focus continues to be retaining existing businesses, attracting new businesses, as well as generating consumer interest in Elmhurst businesses. Recently presented to the city active support of the economic development and the Economic Development Commission's continued expansion role promoting the new and continued economic growth and vitality of the city. We continue to garner the interest of business and developers, with 69 new businesses opening up in Elmhurst so far this year. The establishment of TIF 4, along with the announcement of the Addison parking deck, keeps business and land inquiries coming in on a very regular basis. If you look at the Planning and Zoning Economic Development budget, I'd like to bring your attention to 3012 consulting fees. On the dais tonight, you will see a breakdown of those expenses. In line item 3052 professional services, the $50,000, $25,000 for overall marketing in the city, and $25,000 for any TIF or consulting services that may be needed.
Okay, questions? Bram?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I'm just trying to look at the additional worksheet that was provided to us this evening on the dais before asking a question. On page 132, I'll start with line item 60-45, Public Information Program. What are those expenses? It seems like it's approximately $25,000 every year.
That was money that was put in for type of public information programming. A lot of that is run through the Economic Development Commission, such as our brokered events. We had the Women in Management event. A lot of that will be now moving towards the communications manager's position also, as far as overall city marketing dollars and marketing programs.
Okay. I guess it's tied to the budget. Assistant City Manager Kopp, you just referenced line item 30-12 consultant fees, and we do have the additional breakdown worksheet on the dais this evening. We received some notification today in regards to the current contract with Feinzoll, saying Feinzoll would not like to renew by the end of the year, or past the end of the year going into 2015. The role that Feinzoll played within the city of Elmhurst, is that somewhere in this line item budget? Is it in a different line item? Can you kind of dive a little bit deeper on where that occurs in the budget and who will be picking, if at all, but who would be picking up those responsibilities?
There's been talk over the last year or so, at least, through the DPZ committee about some of those roles, that the current roles that Feinzoll has been doing, as far as the first contact with the city for a new business or opening up a business, or building owners that have a vacant piece of property, or a vacant piece of property they want to help have us help list that property on our available properties website. Myself, communications manager Dan Leahy, and the city manager's administrative staff will be working with Feinzoll over the next 4 weeks or 5 weeks, transitioning those responsibilities to the internal candidates of myself and communications manager and administrative staff.
So if I'm understanding it correctly, those responsibilities would be spread over those 3 roles, if you stated yourself, and the other 2 as well. I don't know if I have additional questions on this, but I haven't had a chance to review the breakdown. So just in case, circle back, I guess. I just want to highlight of possibly coming back to the consultant line items after I get to look at this just a little bit more detail.
Okay. Alderman Gutenkopf?
Well, this is what I want to talk about, are these 2 consultant line items, and I understand we're going to circle back to them. So since we just received the information about the Feinzoll contract, and since your comments tonight about bringing those responsibilities in-house, does the 2015 budget reflect a proposed expenditure for the Feinzoll contract of the roughly $26,000 we're spending this year in line 3012, and the roughly $10,000 we're spending in line 3052? So
no.
So the 2015 budget has already been reduced by what we would have spent for Feinzoll?
Correct.
Okay.
I think the contract for Feinzoll ran through the end of this year, and if you look at the very last column on this spreadsheet, it's a 0.
Well, I understand that's in the spreadsheet, but the budget document was prepared before the letter we received today.
Yeah, that is
So
correct.
my question was, had the staff anticipated going to a second contract or a new contract with Feinzoll for 2015?
I think the answer is no on that.
The answer is no.
All right.
And that is what I wanted to hear.
Any other questions? Alderman Deuter?
Thank you, Mayor. For 2014, we added the position of the planning and zoning assistant. Can you talk about how that person is being used, and are there, does the area now have the ability to do more than in the past, or what is that person's role?
They were hired as the assistant to Than Werner, but I think it's more of like a partnership going on down there right now. Just with the workload we have right now, I think that assistant is just helping us get through the workload we have right now. She's also working as the historical preservation liaison and sustainability task force liaison also. She's doing a great job.
Alderman Levin.
I believe the change in line 1001 from 2013 to 2014 was for that position, but then it looks like it goes up 10% between the 2014 budget, not much less expenditure, and 2015. Is there a reason for that large increase there? It looks like it's about 10% from 2014 budget.
I think the 2014 was a partial year.
Well,
Because she was,
that's reflecting the fact that the 24 estimated is below the budget, I assume.
you're looking at the 2014 of 174,500, going up to 191,400.
Well, in
The estimate,
in annualized dollars, the 2013 would have been about $118,000, so it looks like the 2012 and the 2013 were pre-assistant.
Correct.
And then we budgeted in 2014, we didn't spend it all because it was a partial year, so instead of spending 174, we spent 156, but now we're going to 191, which is even a 9 or 10% over the 2014 budget.
I believe part of that was the 2014 budget was what we thought we could hire an assistant planning and zoning administrator for and what the actual reality of the market was.
Okay.
And also in that 2014 budget, the position was only budgeted for a partial year.
Okay.
And then they came in even more partial than the budget.
Any other questions? Alderman Graham.
Excuse me, I don't know if it's a line item necessarily, so I'll speak generally. Two different questions, one in regards to permit reviews. I've received some feedback from residents on the length it takes for them to receive their permit. Some of the feedback I've received from staff is that because of the new, I'll say, stormwater policy, caused that delay. I just wanted to take this opportunity to ask the question, you know, are we adequately staffed to handle reviews for permits in a timely fashion where, you know, neighbors are not waiting a month to 2 months to receive their permits for any particular project?
You know, I think this year's been a weird year as far as that goes, due to the stormwater policy that's been put in place right now and the stormwater issues themselves. The engineers do a lot of site visits with residents that have any type of flooding issue, so that takes away from the plan review. We have, over the last couple of months, hired a consultant to help us do those plan reviews. At this point, we don't have any outstanding reviews. I just checked with engineering the other day, and everything's been reviewed at least one time. Because of the steep learning curve, a lot of them are being done as resubmittals too. We're reviewing the first time, and we're finding problems because of the new stormwater management policy to get all the engineers and the city, everybody working together on it. But talking to the city engineer plan reviewer the other day, he said that it's getting much better. The engineers they're submitting the plans the way we prefer them to do it, and it's making it a simpler process.
Okay, it's not very often that you hear an elected official asking if you need more staff, but I definitely wanted to make sure that we were adequately staffed just from the feedback, and I know I've talked with you, Mike, in the past about this, and as long as the staff feels that we're caught up with the stormwater policy and we're fine with the staffing we have, that definitely makes sense, because I definitely don't want to have any neighbor discouraged from coming to the city and applying for a permit and following through just because they hear hearsay that it might take a little bit and then do the work without a permit. So I'm glad that we're adequately staffed there and the learning curve is now flattened. The other question, same type of question, is in regards to code enforcement, pretty much paralleled with the question I just asked for permit reviews, but do we feel that we're currently adequately staffed for code enforcement as well? And when I say code enforcement, I guess that's building inspection wise as well as general code enforcement.
Yeah, as far as the building inspections go, I think we're fine with the building inspections. We do have a part-time building inspector that helps us out when we get extremely busy, which we have been all this year. As far as the code enforcement, we're evaluating that right now. Building Commissioner Bruce DeBeal and I have been discussing that, and we're looking at holistically at the whole thing to look at what we can do, or is there a way to make it a better system, a more proactive system.
Very, very good to hear. But in regards to the current budget, we're not forecasting any additional code enforcement staff. We're keeping it as is.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Levin.
I'm not sure, it's not on this page, but it ties into planning, and one of the things that we've talked about a little bit recently is that you see in front of our zoning commission hearings that there's talk about, well, you know, we're changing building heights and it's not consistent with the plan. We had the Providence Bank application over on Butterfield, and there was discussion how it kind of went into the plan, but it wasn't zoned that way. And even the Zoning and Planning Commission's own ordinance says they're supposed to be doing a plan every, I don't know, I think it's every 3 years they're supposed, 3, yeah. And when, you know, if you go back to the hard years of 2009, 2010, we cut back on planning. We eliminated 2 positions. I feel like we need to get some money, and maybe it's in here, for, even if it's contractual planning, to look at planning as we go forward. We really haven't done a whole lot of that. I mean, we're doing it for the North York area, but we haven't done any real reconsideration of zoning or planning in a number of years, and so the Zoning and Planning Commission is really just the zoning commission right now. And when we look at doing things downtown, you know, we hear people accusing us of saying, well, by making our proposals, we're doing the planning. So is that something, I thought I saw something at one point in the budget, not on this page, but somewhere else?
Well, in 3052 in this line item, that $50,000, $25,000 is for any kind of consulting services. $25,000 at $50,000 is put in there for any type of consulting services we need. Now, if we're going to do a full revamp of our comprehensive plan, obviously we have to put about 10 times that in, but that's really, I mean, we don't, that's all we really have in there at this time.
Is that what we spent last time we did?
I think the downtown plan was close to $200,000. I'm not sure what the full comp plan, 200,000.
I don't know what year it stopped, but we used to have line items for comprehensive plan and area plans. We no longer have it, but.
Well, I know it's something we'll be talking about in our committee. It's just, you know, I just feel like we've gotten away from the planning function.
Other comments or questions? Okay, let's move on.
The building department, through October of this year, we've issued over 1,465 permits with a total construction value of over $70 million, which is about a 15% increase over 2013 at this time, and have collected about $1.25 million in permit fees. Our building inspectors have performed over 7,000 construction-related inspections. Code enforcement officers have addressed over 600 code violations and has 2,500 actions taken through inspections, follow-up inspections, and adjudications. Through October of this year, we have issued 123 new home permits and have an additional 30 new home plans that are currently in plan review process. In 2014, the city adopted the most current model building codes. I would like to recognize our building commissioner, Bruce DeBeal, along with the DPZ committee, for the many hours spent understanding and crafting the city of Elmhurst amendments to that code. We strongly feel the Elmhurst attention to quality building requirements plays an important part in maintaining the overall quality of Elmhurst. As the city continues to address stormwater issues, the new check valve policy out of the Public Works and Building Committee allowed reimbursement for installation of 37 check valves, along with 38 new overhead sewers. As a reminder, to receive the reimbursement for either of these programs, the clear water must be removed from the sanitary sewer system. We expect to see similar brisk activity not only in residential but also in commercial properties. Some of the projects we're expecting for next year are the Hahn Street development, the Addison parking deck, Wilder Crossing, Whole Foods, the new townhomes over there on the old Brown's Chicken site, the continuation of Nitty development, the Artis 72-bed assisted living facility. At this time, I'll answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, City Manager Grabowski, it's 10:20. You got a 10-minute discussion in your bag of tricks there?
We'd like to at least start the municipal utility fund,
Okay.
see how far we get through that, and then probably call it a night.
May I make a recommendation?
Sure.
To not start one of the funds which are pretty large and probably in-depth conversation, and maybe skip down to line item T, administration.
Did you say skip down to or adjourn? I didn't hear you properly.
Or adjourn, but I think administration.
Or adjourn? Is that what you said?
Or adjourn. But I think line item T
second that
is
motion.
definitely something we can fly through.
Alderman Healy, you wanted to add?
I'd like to move to adjourn.
I second the motion.
It's the time change.
There you go. We actually worked an extra 50 minutes, is what you're saying, Alderman Gutenkopf.
My body says it's 11:30.
I think that's a fantastic idea. City Manager Grabowski, hate to disappoint, but someone's head's going to hit the table within the next 10 minutes. I don't want that to happen. So we have a motion to adjourn by Alderman Healy, second by Alderman York. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.